On the Lakers in general, the big story obviously this week was Luka Doncic and his return to Dallas.
Yep.
Just what words even begin to describe that
That was
moment?
wild.
Like I tweeted about it and I said, Luka still crying 2 minutes into the game after scoring, and
Yeah.
not two
Whale
minutes,
scoring.
not like 2 minutes into the game, like 2 minutes went by on your watch, like 2 minutes on the clock above
In
the
game time.
basket,
Yeah.
which we know is 4 hours in real life because it,
Yeah.
and he's still crying. And like, the word I used was visceral. Like, that was
Hmm.
so raw. That was so
Yeah,
visceral. But it also, to me, presented very upfrontly this concept of price optimization in our world right now, like, or cost optimization or profit optimization is like not coming for everything. It's not like billionaires and people are coming for it using that as their tool, but like is that emotion like that's our resistance, I feel like, as humans, like that it's just like
yeah,
showing that we feel things. Like there's no way that they're as confident in Dallas about that trade now as they were before, no matter what they spin it as
for
after
sure.
that night and that fan reaction.
I think that's such a good point about sort of that as a micro exhibit of like a macro problem, which is like profits over everything. And I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that's I really like that as sort of a representation of that. But yeah, I kind of, it's I thought it was really important to show something like, one of my like guiding lights or, mission statements, I guess, as like a media person is just sort of like humanizing athletes and like leaning into like human stories and reminding people that these are human beings because I think because they do kind of superhuman things, and also because they make a lot of money and to your point about wealth inequality and stuff in this country, like people have a lot of resentment built up against people who, especially people who came from nothing and came into a lot of money, like a lot of the trajectory of a lot of NBA athletes. Like, I think people resent that because that's what they want for themselves and they don't have it. And so obviously there's like a lack of empathy there just because it's like, well, you got what I wanted. And so you don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I also think because they do these superhuman things with their bodies, people look at them as superhuman and thus like above feelings, above the trappings of humanity, when in reality, they're just regular people doing incredible things. And I think it's really any reminders we can get, within the sort of framework of toxic masculinity that is sports, that these guys cry and they feel things and they get their feelings hurt and they, you know, if you're going like last year, I thought it was important the discourse around like Damian Lillard's play contextualized within the fact that he was going through a really difficult divorce. And so just kind of those reminders that like these people go through real life stuff that does impact their on and off the court. And I thought it was, I mean, I hate it for Luka that it had to be Luka because it was really painful to watch him in so much pain. But as far as, what that demonstrates about the human experience as an athlete, like I thought it was so important that it happened on such a big stage. Like I could just picture all the, macho guys like watching this and having to reckon with the fact that like clearly one of the best in his sport is just sobbing because the emotions are just overcoming him and like having to sort of reconcile that you can be incredible at a sport and like the best of the best and also overcome with sadness and emotion in certain moments. And I just think that's like such an important thing for people to see on a stage that big. But I really, my heart was breaking for him because that's just
Yeah.
such a real, that's a breakup, right? Like all of us, if you've lived long enough, you've gone through a painful breakup. And it doesn't matter if it's, a work breakup, a friendship breakup, or a romantic one. Like that pain is so, to your point, visceral and relatable. And like everyone can imagine, like it wasn't just a breakup, it was messy. And they like dragged his name through the mud. And it was just so brutal. And to be confronted with all of that in such a public way, like I can only imagine how difficult that was for him, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I always think about how nobody ever talks about how all the beer, fat, hookah leaks like made Luka feel.
Feel.
That's
Yeah.
not a question that I've heard somebody ask like once on a national like TV show or anything. Like, how do you think you'd feel if you were It's just like, well, he was fat, or it doesn't matter if he was smoking crack. Like, like there,
Or like he gets paid all this money and like it's
that's
like the
the
Don Draper, like that's what the money's for. And it's like, guys, money doesn't insulate you from feelings. Like I don't know in what types of plain English I have to put this. Like you can still get your feelings hurt even if you're very well compensated for your job.
anybody with a lot of money ever will be quoted at some point as being like, "Oh, but it can't buy everything." And it's like,
Right.
well, what's the not everything? Like
Yeah.
it's the human part of it, right? So I kind of brought up Luca's crying as a form of resistance with regard to like corporate authority.
Hmm.
You brought it up as a kind of resistance to the direction our world is like loudly heading in. Like
Yeah.
we were already in like a hot take economy where social media is like the market's response to a generation crying to be heard and to have an outlet. And then they get on there now and they're like, well, here's my fully baked opinion 30 minutes after an hour-long album dropped about why the
Oh
album
my God.
sucks.
As a musician, that's my pet peeve. I'm just like let me get on my like millennial soapbox for a second.
Please.
When I was growing up, I got a weekly allowance and I would save it to buy one CD a month. And because of that, there was no streaming. I'm older than dirt. And so there was no streaming, there was no Spotify, there was no anything. There wasn't even iTunes yet. And you had to live with that album because you had invested money in it and you didn't have enough money to invest in a bunch of different ones. You could buy one. And so you gave it two, three, four chances before you formed an opinion because that was the music that you had at your disposal.
Yes.
And the way we consume music is so different now. And to your point, it's very emblematic of the way we consume everything, which is just like with a certain level of entitlement and a certain lack of reverence. And it's just sort of like I just feel like things aren't like sat with and considered and processed and chewed up, and everything is like live tweeted through or whatever. And yeah, that's the thing that makes me feel the oldest, I would say, is the way we consume things and like the sort of need to have an opinion on something immediately.
I think too, to add on, like the need to have the best or to have better.
Yeah.
Like you open up TikTok, okay, you've in the 20 seconds you've seen sea lions and someone falling off their skateboard and hitting themselves in the groin, and also like a news clip of like a nation's president discussing, like there's
Yeah.
so much information. You get to the point where you're numbed to the hook of any video. Like you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't think I'd like what they're trying to probably talk about, so I'll just move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
I think that happens with music. I think people get 30 seconds into a song and like there could be eight beat switches in that song. They'd have never
Yeah.
know because the
Yeah.
first one wasn't their speed, so they just skipped it. I almost can't help but think if that which is so like societally present and enabled by everything we do,
Yeah.
if that's the kind of thinking that resulted in the decision makers with the Dallas Mavericks being like, well, this video is like this creator is great, but we can find better out there, right? Somewhere, a little bit like quitting your job before having a new one lined up, but
Yeah,
just
the
like
hubris for sure.
so like moving on from Luca, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is great. We'll find better, and I think that's like a symbol of the optimal obsessed society we're in right now, where
I
like,
love Luca as like an allegory for everything. Like this situation is an allegory with everything that's wrong with society because it's like yes, you have all those things. You have, our response to like toxic masculinity and how we expect people not to feel things. You have the like profit optimization, like he's not going to be worth his extension and we have to find something cheaper. You have the like everything is disposable and replaceable. We can do better. Like There's really, you should write about this. There's some meat on this bone. I love
This
it.
this is why I saw your tweet about like I have thoughts, and I was like, oh, I have thoughts also. So
I love your
let-
thoughts. They're great.
let's bounce.